my father denied me the firm for being a woman and gave it to my brother, who barely passed the bar. I quit, joined the competition, and destroyed them in court, exposing every mistake my brother made in front of everyone. I'm 26 years old. I'm a lawyer who graduated from Harvard with honors. And 6 months ago, my father basically told me that everything I'd accomplished didn't mean shit because I was born a woman. I know. It sounds like something out of the 50s. But this happened in Dallas, Texas, in 2025. And I still can't believe my own family did this to me. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I still believed my father saw me as his capable daughter and not just, the female decoration of the Peterson family. I grew up in one of those huge houses in North Dallas, the kind of place where everyone knows your last name and expects things from you. My father, Gregory Peterson, had built Peterson and Associates from the ground up, and by the time I was old enough to remember, it was already one of the most respected law firms in Texas. We're talking major cases, clients with real money, the type of firm where interns would do anything to get a position. My mother, Rachel, was the perfect stereotype of a successful lawyer's wife. She organized dinners, smiled at charity events, and basically existed in my father's shadow without ever complaining. Looking back, I should have seen it coming, the way she accepted everything without questioning anything, as if her opinion didn't matter. But at the time, when you're a kid, you think that's just how the world works. Then there's Lucas, my younger brother by 3 years. Lucas, who could barely graduate from a state university after failing the admissions exam twice. Lucas, who needed help passing the bar exam and succeeded on his 3rd try. Lucas, who never worked a day at a firm that wasn't Dad's. But he was the male son. You know what I mean? And in my father's mind, that apparently was the only thing that mattered at the end of the day. I, on the other hand, killed myself studying. I was valedictorian of my high school class, got a full scholarship to Harvard, graduated magna cum laude, and passed the Texas bar exam on the 1st try with one of the highest scores of my year. I worked at 2 of the most competitive firms in Boston during my summers, won 3 national mock trial competitions, and basically dedicated every second of my life to becoming the best lawyer I could be. All because I grew up hearing my father say, "Someday you and Lucas are going to take over the firm, and you're going to take it to the next level." I assumed, stupidly, that you and Lucas meant we'd both have leadership roles, that it would be a partnership based on merit and ability. The truth is, my father was always proud of me, or at least that's how it seemed. He came to my competitions, bragged about my achievements to his colleagues, introduced me as my daughter, the Harvard lawyer. But now that I think about it, he never used words like my successor or the future leader of the firm. He reserved those terms for Lucas, even when Lucas could barely draft a legal memo without someone correcting it 3 times. When I returned to Dallas after graduating, like 2 years ago, I started working at Peterson and Associates officially. And let me tell you, I excelled. I won 80% of my cases, brought in 3 major corporate clients on my own, and basically became the person everyone turned to when they needed to solve something complicated. Meanwhile, Lucas showed up late, lost documents, and once almost cost us a trial because he forgot to file a motion on time. But Dad always had excuses for him. He's learning. He needs time. He's still young. Lucas was 23 years old. He wasn't a child. About 6 months ago, my father called us to a family dinner. He said he had something important to announce, and I honestly thought it was going to be about expanding the firm or opening an office in Houston, something like that. We all arrived at the house, that ridiculously large mansion where we grew up, and sat down in the formal dining room that my mother only uses for special occasions. There were candles, the expensive china, red wine that probably cost more than what many people earn in a week. My mother was nervous, which should have been another warning sign, but I was too excited thinking about the firm's future. My father stood up, raised his glass, and said something like, "This family is the most important thing to me, and Peterson and Associates is the legacy I want to leave." So far, so good. But then he looked directly at Lucas and said, "That's why I've decided that when I retire next year, Lucas will take the reins of the firm as managing partner." I sat there with my fork in my hand, trying to process what I'd just heard. I looked at Lucas, who had this stupid smile on his face like he'd just won the lottery without buying a ticket. I looked at my mother, who was staring at her plate like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. And then I looked at my father, waiting for him to say, "And Claire will be co-partner, or Claire will manage this department something, anything, but he said nothing. He just kept talking about how Lucas was going to need support, how the family had to stay united, blah, blah, blah. And I felt like someone had hit me in the stomach with a baseball bat. I raised my hand, literally raised my hand like I was in high school, and said, "Sorry, what about me?" My father looked at me with this expression, like he was surprised I had the audacity to interrupt his big moment, and said, "You're going to continue being a valuable attorney at the firm, Claire. No one's questioning your talent, but Lucas is the male son, and these things matter in our environment. Clients expect to see a man in charge. Clients expect to see a man in charge." Those were his exact words, as if we were in 1950 instead of 2025. I told him, "Dad, I have better credentials than Lucas, better results, more experience. I've brought more money to this firm in 2 years than he has in his entire career." And he just looked at me and said, "It's not about that, Claire. It's about tradition, about what works. Firms like ours need a strong leader, and men project that image better. Besides, you'll eventually get married, have children, and you won't want the pressure of managing an entire firm. You won't want the pressure." As if he knew what I wanted. As if the last 8 years of my life working toward this goal meant nothing. Lucas, who hadn't said a word during all this, finally spoke up and said something like, "Claire, don't get like this. We're still going to work together. I'll just have the official title." And that was it. That was the moment when something broke inside me. I told him, "You know what, Lucas? Enjoy your official title that you didn't earn. I hope Dad's clients don't realize you can't tell the difference between an appeal and a civil complaint." My father turned red, the kind of red he gets when someone challenges him in public, and told me, "Young lady, you're not going to talk to your brother like that, in my house." And I laughed. Literally laughed, because the situation was so absurd, I couldn't do anything else. And I told him, "Young lady, I'm 26 years old, Dad. I'm a professional attorney, not a child. And if this is your house and these are your rules, then I don't want to be part of this." My mother tried to intervene with her soft voice, saying, "Claire, don't make a scene. Your father knows what's best for the family." And that hurt more than anything my father had said, because I realized she had accepted this kind of shit her whole life, and now expected me to do the same. I got up from the table, threw my napkin on my plate, and said, "I'm going to pack my things." Lucas said something like, "Oh, Claire, don't be dramatic," but I was already going up the stairs to my old room. I had clothes there, some documents, my laptop, things I'd left because I basically lived between the family home and my small apartment downtown. I threw everything in 2 suitcases while listening to my father, yelling from downstairs that I was being irrational, that I was going to regret it, that no other firm was going to value me like he valued me. And that last part almost made me laugh again, because how exactly was he valuing me? By telling me my gender was more important than my talent? I went downstairs with my suitcases, and my father was standing there in the entrance, blocking my way. He told me, "If you walk out that door, don't expect me to take you back." And I told him, "Perfect, because I don't plan on coming back." He added, "You're going to ruin your career, Claire. No one in Dallas is going to want to hire you when they find out you quit Peterson and Associates over a tantrum." I responded, "It's not a tantrum, Dad. It's dignity. Something you apparently lost a long time ago." My mother was crying silently in the background, but she didn't say anything, because she never said anything when it really mattered. I left that house and drove to my apartment crying so hard, I almost crashed, twice. I spent the whole night awake, alternating between crying and searching for job offers on the internet. Part of me thought, what am I doing? I'm throwing away years of planning. But the other part, the part that had killed itself studying and working, knew I couldn't stay in a place where my father had literally told me my gender was an insurmountable obstacle. The next morning, I sent my formal resignation to Peterson and Associates by email. I didn't go to the office, didn't talk to anyone, just sent a professional email saying that effective immediately I was leaving my position at the firm and wished them the best. In less than an hour, I had like 20 missed calls from my father, 10 messages from Lucas, telling me I was overreacting, and exactly 0 messages from my mother. I blocked their numbers because I didn't have the energy to keep fighting. During the next 2 weeks, I applied to all the decent firms in Dallas. And here's the thing my father didn't understand. I was good, really good, and my resume spoke for itself. I had interviews with 5 different firms, and they were all impressed. I finally accepted an offer from Coleman and Partners, a boutique firm specializing in corporate litigation. It wasn't as big as Peterson and Associates, but they had a solid reputation, and, most importantly, the managing partner, Edward Coleman, told me directly in the interview, "Here, we don't care about your gender. We care if you can win cases, and your record suggests you can." Edward became something like a mentor, the kind of boss my father should have been. He was like 55 years old, had built his firm based on real meritocracy, and basically gave me freedom to handle complex cases from the start. I felt valued for the first time in months, like really valued for what I could do, not despite my gender, but simply as a professional. Like 2 months passed, and I was starting to rebuild my life. I'd won 3 minor cases, was building my own client base, and, honestly, was happier professionally than I'd been in years. I hadn't talked to my family at all, though occasionally I'd hear rumors through colleagues about how Lucas was doing at Peterson and Associates, and let's just say it wasn't good. He'd lost an important client by missing a deadline, had gotten the firm into a minor ethical issue, and was basically proving he had no idea how to handle the pressure of being managing partner. One day, Edward called me to his office and told me, "I have an interesting case for you. A corporate client is suing another firm for legal malpractice and wants us to represent them. The case is solid. We have good chances of winning or getting a good settlement." I told him, "Perfect. Sounds good. What's the firm being sued?" And Edward looked at me with this serious expression and said, "Peterson and Associates." I don't know what face I made. But Edward immediately said, "Look, I understand it's complicated because of your history with them, and if you don't feel comfortable, you're not obligated to take the case. But Claire, you're the best litigator we have for this type of situation, and I think you can handle it professionally. Plus, according to the preliminary documents, the attorney who made the mistake is Lucas Peterson." I sat there processing what he was telling me, and I swear I felt like 10 different emotions at the same time. There was anger, obviously, but there was also satisfaction, and fear, and like this strange feeling of anticipation. I told Edward, "I need to think about it. Give me a couple of days." And he said, "Sure, take the time you need." The next 2 days were mental chaos. On one hand, I thought, this is perfect. It's the opportunity to show my father and Lucas exactly what they rejected. On the other hand, I thought, do I really want to sue my own family? Does that make me a bad person? I called a couple of friends from Harvard, and they all basically told me the same thing. It's just business, Claire. It's not personal, but it felt personal, very personal. In the end, I decided to do it. I told Edward, "I accept the case, but I need you to understand I'm going to be completely professional, no family drama in court." And he said, "That's exactly what I'd expect from you." I started reviewing the documents, and honestly, the case was stronger than I thought. Lucas had given bad advice to a client about a corporate merger, had missed crucial deadlines, and had basically cost the client company millions of dollars. The negligence was obvious. There were documents, emails, everything was there in black and white. The first hearing was scheduled for a month later. I spent that month preparing obsessively, reviewing every detail, anticipating every possible argument. The night before the hearing, I barely slept, not because of nerves about the case, but because I knew I was going to see my father and Lucas for the first time in almost 4 months. I didn't know how I was going to react. If I was going to be able to maintain my composure, if they were going to try to talk to me. I arrived at court like 30 minutes early, in my most professional suit, my briefcase, and basically my best serious lawyer face. I entered the room, and there they were. My father and Lucas sitting at the defense table with 2 other attorneys from the firm I didn't know well. My father saw me first, and I swear his face went through like 5 different expressions: surprise, confusion, anger, and something that maybe was respect, but I'm not sure. Lucas looked at me and went pale, literally pale, like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't say anything to them. I sat at my table, took out my documents, and acted like they were any other opponent. The judge entered, started the session, and I presented our case. And let me tell you, I was brilliant. I'm not saying that to brag. It's simply a fact. I presented the evidence of negligence so clearly and compellingly that even the judge raised his eyebrows. When it was the defense's turn, One of the other attorneys from Peterson and Associates tried to argue that the errors had been minor, that the client had contributed to the problem. I systematically dismantled them, point by point, using their own documents against them. Lucas didn't say a word during the entire hearing. My father didn't either, though I could feel his gaze the whole time. When the session ended, the judge basically said the evidence of negligence was strong and suggested the parties consider a settlement. I left the courtroom feeling this weird mix of triumph and sadness, because yes, I'd won, but I'd also been fighting against my own family in public. The next 3 hearings were similar. I kept presenting evidence. They kept trying to defend themselves weakly, and each time it became clearer that Peterson and Associates was going to lose or have to pay a large settlement. In the 4th session, we finally reached a settlement. My client received significant compensation. I can't say exactly how much due to confidentiality, but let's say it was enough to be noticed in Peterson and Associates books. It was a complete victory for us. After signing the settlement, I was packing my things when I saw my father and Lucas approaching. My first instinct was to run, but I forced myself to stand there, professional. My father looked at me and said, "Can we talk for a moment?" And I said, "If it's about the case, everything's finalized. If it's personal, I'm not sure I want to have that conversation." He said, "Please, Claire, just 5 minutes." Lucas looked miserable, staring at the floor like he wanted to disappear. I told them, "Okay, 5 minutes." My father started with, "Claire, I need you to know I'm proud of you. The work you did on this case was exceptional." And I almost laughed because, really? Was he proud of me after I basically publicly humiliated his favorite son and his firm? I told him, "Dad, I don't need you to be proud of me. I needed you to believe in me when it mattered." He was quiet for a moment and then said, "You were right. About Lucas. About the firm. About everything. I made a terrible mistake. That took me by surprise. Honestly, my father isn't the type who admits mistakes easily." I asked him, "And what changed? The fact that I beat you in court? Or did you finally realize that handing the firm to Lucas because he has a Y chromosome was the stupidest decision of your life?" He flinched at that, but said, "Both things, I suppose. I've seen how Lucas handles the firm these past months, Claire, and it's not working. We've lost clients, staff morale is low, and this case we just lost is just the tip of the iceberg. Meanwhile, I've heard about everything you've accomplished at Coleman and Partners, and I've realized I let go of the person who should have been my successor." Lucas finally spoke and said, "Claire, I'm sorry. I know I didn't deserve the firm. I always knew it. And honestly, I feel relieved that you exposed my errors because I couldn't keep pretending I knew what I was doing." It was pathetic to hear him, but it was also honest, I guess. I told him, "Lucas, I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at Dad for putting you in a position you weren't prepared for just because you're a man. You and I could have worked together, each in our strengths. But he decided gender was more important than talent." My father said, "You're absolutely right. And I want to fix it. I want to offer you the position of managing partner at Peterson and Associates. Lucas will work under your direction, and you'll have complete control over important decisions. I know I can't undo the damage I caused, but I can try to correct it now." I stood there, looking at him, trying to process whether he was sincere or just desperate because his firm was in trouble. It was probably a bit of both, honestly. I told him, "Dad, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can go back after everything that happened." He asked, "What do you need to consider? It?" And I responded, "Time. I need time to think about whether I want to return to a family that told me I wasn't enough for being a woman." He nodded and said, "Take all the time you need. The offer is open." And with that, they left, leaving me there with my Coleman and Partners colleagues who had witnessed everything from a distance and were now looking at me with curiosity. That was like 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've been mulling over the decision. On one hand, returning to Peterson and Associates as managing partner would be the ultimate triumph, like really rubbing it in everyone's face that I was right all along. Plus, it's the firm I grew up watching. There's a part of me that still considers it my family legacy. On the other hand, I've built something good at Coleman and Partners. I have Edward's respect and all my colleagues, and I don't have to deal with complicated family dynamics. My mother called me a few days ago. First time we've spoken since I left. She told me, "Claire, I know I haven't been the mother you deserved. I've always been too passive, too willing to accept things as they are. But watching you fight for what you deserve made me realize how much I've wasted my own life. I want you to know I support whatever decision you make, and I'm sorry I didn't support you when you needed it most." It was weird to hear her talk like that, like really express an opinion, and it made me feel a bit of hope that maybe things could change in my family. I don't know what I'm going to decide yet. Part of me wants to go back and prove I can take Peterson and Associates to new heights, show the Dallas legal world that a woman can run a prestigious firm better than any man. But another part of me thinks, why should I have to prove anything to people who should have believed in me from the beginning? Why should I give them the satisfaction of rescuing their firm after they rejected me? Edward told me that whatever decision I make, I have a home at Coleman and partners, but he also told me he'd completely understand if I decided to return to my family's firm. He's a good guy, the kind of boss everyone deserves to have. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my father had been more like him from the beginning, if he'd valued merit over stupid gender traditions. What I do know is that I proved my point. I proved to my father, to Lucas, and to everyone who doubted me that I'm an exceptional lawyer, not despite being a woman, but simply because I'm good at what I do. I won that case not because I had something to prove, but because I prepared better, worked harder, and was smarter than the opposition. That's something no one can take away from me, no matter what firm I end up running. Yesterday, I was in my office reviewing some contracts when I received an email from my father. It said something like, "Claire, I've been thinking a lot about our conversation. I want you to know, I'm not offering you the firm because I need you to rescue it, though I admit I do need you. I'm offering it to you because it's yours by right. It always should have been yours. And it was my pride and my antiquated ideas that kept me from seeing it before. Whatever your decision, I want you to know you're the best lawyer I've ever known, and that includes myself. I haven't responded yet because I'm not sure what to say. Do I forgive him? Do I go back? Do I stay where I am? I don't have the answers, and maybe it's okay not to have them yet. What I do have is the certainty that I'm never again going to let anyone tell me my gender determines my professional value. Whether at Peterson and Associates or at Coleman and Partners, I'm going to keep winning cases, building my career, and proving that women belong in any leadership position where our skills take us. My father learned that lesson the hard way, and I hope others learn from his mistake without having to lose their daughters in the process. And for now, I guess I'm going to take my time to decide. There's no rush, and for the first time in months, I feel like I have control over my own destiny. And that, more than any title or position, is what really matters at the end of the day.